When we turn up, like, I don't want to think like you're hiding something from me. I don't want to turn up and that door's locked. Why is that door locked? What's going on there? What's happened? Be as, constructive as you can with your valuer. Don't put any pressure on them. Definitely don't bloody offer them anything.
Welcome to the Stamford Finance podcast, where we strip back property deals and reveal what really makes them work or fall apart. I'm Pete Beaumont, and today we're diving into one of the most nerve-wracking parts of any property deal, the valuation.
If it's £9 million, show us the true comparator. Why do you get to that? Well, this one sold on the adjacent road for 10. Yeah, but it's absolutely mint. And your £9 million one's stunning outside, but it needs 2 or 3 million spending on it to get it to that standard.
If you're a developer, investor, or broker, you know the feeling. The valuation drops. The number isn't what you'd hoped for. And suddenly, the deal you've been working on for months hangs in the balance.
Contrary to public, I hate killing deals off. Like, you don't want to kill deals off. You kind of feel like you're doing your job when you kill a deal off. But obviously, my mantra's been helping lenders lend, but lend well.
In this episode, I'm joined by Stuart Fraser, CEO of Stamford Finance, and Colin Horton, one of the biggest names in valuation. And if you're on LinkedIn, there's a very good chance he's already in your feed. If you want to protect your deal and your profit before the valuation lands, this episode is for you. Colin, Stuart, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, my friend.
Yeah, good to be back, Pete.
As always, a pleasure to have you. Colin, let's start with a fairly open question. Would you say you've brought something a little bit different to the valuation scene in a world that's generally perceived as being quite dry? The surveying with personality.
The surveying with personality thing, it came from a point where I came into this market and I was like, this could be done so much better. Fundamentally, we're providing a service, but there's a way you can deliver a service in the right way. And it is fundamentally, it's a people business, and it was a random hashtag that I just put, surveying with personality. And I've used it every day on LinkedIn now for coming up to 3 years. And it's kind of really stuck with us as a brand and as we've grown the brand. And I just think the surveying market needed to be disrupted. I think the old guard had a clear run at it for years and just got work because of the name, not necessarily the service. And I didn't agree with that. And me being a plucky little lad from Essex, I was like, I'm going to have a little crack at this. And we've had some obstacles, mate. We've had some naysayers, so to speak. But I like to think we've pushed the market to be better.
Yeah, I have no doubt. And Stuart, I guess the personability aspect is also something that we pride ourselves on. And how important has that been throughout your career as well?
Yeah, look, 100%. And I think it's testament to Colin and his team that when their name appears on a folder or a file in one of our potential loans, you pull a smile because you're like, you know what? I like these people. They're good to deal with. They're good fun because it is dry. Some would say boring. Some would, definitely stale. But I think it's massive in any business, isn't it? I think your business is probably people and relationships, isn't it? And the two things go hand in hand. My old business was no different. It was your clients. It was the people operating the business for you on a day-to-day. And ours is the same. And as you're expanding and hopefully being more successful, as we've had a few new hires recently as well, and we've got more planned as we get bigger, I think just making sure those people are the right fit for the culture and the ethos you're trying to build, it's critical, really, particularly in our space.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that something that you found difficult as well in terms of building the team around you? How important is that ethos for hiring with?
It's been the hardest bit, mate, if I'm being completely honest with you. And because I am like I am, I'm not your atypical valuer. I come from an asset management background, making 2 billionaire brothers very wealthy. That was my background. So I was taught how to get every penny out of the pound. So I approached surveying very differently to maybe other firms. And you have to have the right person that wants to be part of that journey. And I want to be, I don't want to be part of a corporate machine. I don't want to be a number. I want to be part of something. I want to actually make a mark, legal legacy. And, we pay well as well, but it's got to be the right person, and they've got to be prepared to face challenges. And, it's a market that doesn't like change, doesn't want new people to come along. And finding someone that gets it, that I can put in front of you and that could be here today and still represent the brand has been incredibly difficult. I also realised that I can't hire lots of mini Collins because that would be a terrible thing. No one wants that, you know. But we've got a really good little team. We're growing. There's about 30 of us now at the firm, which is stressful on payday and stuff like that, you know. But it is really hard, and you kind of, I'm not a massive CV person, you know. Of course, we've got a lot of ex-CBRE, Knight Frank, Savills members of our staff, but it's the person. It's straight away, you know, within 2 or 3 seconds. It's a bit like dating. It's like, would I want to date that person? Do I want to be in a relationship with that person? If so, come into the team. You know, not in a weird HR kind of way, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, look, I think you're almost looking for a bit of a twinkle in the eye, aren't
Correct.
you? Someone who's willing to maybe think solution rather than dwell on the problem, bring something different, bring a different angle in. You know, read your customer base as well, because like you deal with lots of us, I'm sure. Yeah. We all are different. We find your approach refreshing. Others, you might have to just taper it down a little bit, I'm guessing, because there may be more established in the space, because I think there is quite a difference between some of the real established long-term valuers, surveyors, lenders, borrowers, and some of the newer guard. And I think if you can be a bit chameleon, or you've got the sense to approach things suited to your client, you're going to be more successful, aren't you?
I mate, 100%. It's that, like, you both, I'm not just saying it because you're both here, but you have that little kind of twinkle in your eye. It's that little kind of like, I like these people, I can work with them, and it's rare. There's not loads of people like that in surveying.
No.
So when you do find that person, you got to go all guns blazing to try and get them in.
Yeah.
But it's so hard trying to find the right person. So
yeah, I mean, look, we've learned loads from dealing with different people in the sector, yourself included, and like I take a lot from Mark at Together, because if he likes the person, he will do everything within his remit to make that loan work, to make it happen. He'll try and find the solution, because look, very often there's a problem with a title, there's a problem with a charge or something like that, and it's just trying to approach it on like, I really want to make this happen without cutting corners or taking a risk on you're not comfortable. I think if you've got that approach, you'll do well in any life.
And so to jump into the nitty gritty slightly of valuation, I'm very interested to hear your steer once we've had Colin's. But Colin,
oh, no.
How do you approach valuing a property?
I'm passionate about property from the start. I used to bunk off school to watch Homes Under the Hammer.
I love it.
I didn't play truant and get into. I mean, you know, I didn't do anything naughty. I was literally watching all the property shows from 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock on BBC One. You know, I loved it. And valuation, I look at it from multiple aspects. I'm married to a BDM of another lender, who also used to be a broker. In another world, and maybe in a world after I've exited from this firm, I may well go into that space myself. So I look at it from the whole spectrum, you know, and I'm an investor myself as well. So, you know, there's lots of ways of looking at it. And for me, every property has its own story. There is no, you know, just because something's on Rightmove doesn't necessarily tell you the full story about what's happened. You know, you have to look at the history, you know, and agents lie. They, you know, not all agents, some agents are really good, but, you know, a lot of agents will not necessarily create the clearest picture for you when you are trying to do evaluations. You have to go purely impartial. But of course it is hard sometimes, because you do have a preference for certain types of property. You know, I love barn conversions, I love period properties. You know, I don't necessarily love brand new boxes. That's not necessarily my kind of style of property. But there is no right or wrong answer. It's just, you do get a gut feel when you go and see a property, you know, and they've, you know, massively overvalued this. This is not right. Or actually, this is probably a little bit undervalued. And very rare that actually does happen. But a lot of time, you know, people are coming way above what they do actually think it's worth. But I think it's just about how you kind of deliver that valuation advice to your clients and stuff. Remember, there are a lot of stakeholders involved. There's obviously the people with cash. There's the BDM whose target is. Obviously, there's the broker involved as well. There's lots of people involved in this transaction. So for us, valuation isn't just a binary exercise of putting numbers on a piece of paper. It's just communication with your clients and telling them the actual story, because a report, you know, 100-page report is pretty boring, you know, no one really wants to sit there and read through all that. So like working with guys like yourself, it's lovely to be able to have a chat and just talk through the deal and tell you my actual concerns, or if I do actually think that's actually really good, because, you know, unfortunately the RICS Red Book standards does make it a very binary exercise. So you have to approach valuation not just on paper, but verbally and on a relationship basis.
Yeah, okay. And Stuart, I mean, we have this debate probably once a week in the office when
Probably
we
every
actually when we have a red book, we then break down that data ourselves. What is it that you particularly find interesting within the valuations that we as lenders look at?
So I think there's a lot of things, and you have got a tough job, and I think, lenders need to appreciate that. There's context to every deal, isn't there, that you need to present in such a way that just isn't lost in the 100 pages you refer to, because they can be a brutal read when they're really sterile like that. I mean, you've really got to be full of coffee and full of beans in the morning to get through one of those. But I think, look, you're looking for you to bring to life that asset, the comparables, the risks, the opportunities, and why you're sort of landing on, because I get your risks thing, which I don't claim to understand, and it's quite binary, but, why do you think it's in that range? Because naturally, as lenders, we want to lend the comfortable side of it, and the borrower wants it to be maximised. And the problem I think we've got a lot of the time is, very often you're only testing that value 12, 18, 24 months down the line when a loan's matured and you're being exited by a sale or a refi or whatever it might be. And, take the UK at the minute, where is the property market going to be in 2 years? I don't talk to a lot of people who are massively positive about its movement. Some are very negative. I read an article yesterday on social media about the market in London, which I'm sure we'll come on to, because we always do, and it's potentially a depressing place, isn't it? So there's a lot of factors, but I think giving us simplistic context, look, we love your reports and you've worked with us on them because we probably like a certain presentation and style versus someone else. Bring it to life in pictures as well, because look, Google Maps, Google Earth, they're great tools, aren't they? But if it's a dev loan or it's part way through a development, I need some real context on where this is up to. We often have the debate, well, the roof's on, well, is it on, or are the tiles on pallets on the floor, and they could be somewhere else tomorrow because it's happened to us. So I think there's a lot of things, but trying to bring that context, bring that summary, and you hit the nail on the head. Right, Colin, can we have a chat about this? You're here, I'm probably here. Why are you there? Because I'm here for these reasons. And you probably end up moving a bit, and we move a bit, and you get to a point, because it just isn't black and white, is it? I mean, we talk about some assets, we've actually privately funded developments ourselves locally, and you get to the end, and it should be worth what you thought, but it isn't, because particularly the higher end ones, 7-figure properties and whatnot, it's a tough space to shift. Shift properties.
I think we had one recently with you guys, and I obviously won't say which one it was, but it didn't quite live up to what the original marketing material was supposed to look like. And it's just, for me, that's frustrating. And I think I've said to Pete a lot of time, and obviously, for you guys, I'm close with you guys, so, but it's always a gut feel for us, that. And it's like, and people often ask me, what's your gut say? And I'm like, I'll do it or don't do it, and I think for me, that's the beauty of good valuation advice when you're professional service. And it's not just us, there are other firms that do that, of course, but like, Pete, don't do it, or Joe, what? Do it. It's a good deal. I like what I'm seeing here, but we are at the beck and call of the developers actually doing what they've said they're going to do. Like, they've got this £4 million scheme, whatever, but they've got crappy IKEA kitchens in there, and I was like, you're not going to get that top end market without putting the top end materials in. So it's just, that's why just having a conversation like you said, Stu, is so important. Yeah.
And again, that is something that we really appreciate. Again, our personability and having those conversations, the same way that we would have the conversations with the client, we can actually articulate those points so much better. But it's very interesting comparing the two veins of thought there, because Stuart, there are some elements that would be important to us that might not be so important to a red book. Do you have anything that you could perhaps elaborate on as to things that we're also looking for that might not even feature into the red books? You've mentioned already London, and you've mentioned sensitivities around that market. Where are we seeing that ourselves? Where are we getting our information from?
I think that we're getting our information from the web largely, aren't we? We're looking at what has shifted like that recently, and sometimes you really struggle to find true comparators, particularly in London. Styles of buildings, period properties versus new, more sterile boxes. I think anything you can find that gives you as much comparable information is just helpful, isn't it? So we'll use the web for that. We'll speak to maybe the previous lender or someone who's bought or traded an asset of similar style, maybe an apartment in the same block or whatever. But anything you can find that's as relevant as possible, because what I hate is you get a sterile valuation and here's the comparables, and you go on and you look at them. You might even go on Rightmove and go through historical data. It's nothing like it. Yeah, you just got, it's 4 beds, it's built around the same time, and it's in a similar postcode. Great, but one of them is absolutely trashed internally or built to a pretty bog standard, and one of them is ultra high end. It's got great communal facilities and things like that. It just almost renders it a waste of time, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And Colin, when we first met, you actually said to me, "I'm here to be sued as a valuer." Is that where?
I mean, we've had the chat, haven't we, Pete? Like, where it often amazes me why lenders don't just have internal valuation teams, because that makes so much more sense. A team you trust, a team you train, a team that are there for you. They're exactly what you've created, Fundamentally, valuers are there to take the risk away from the lender. So if something does go horribly wrong, that you can ultimately fundamentally sue them, and it's a funny old game, You're sitting there like we pay out nearly 200 grand a year just on insurance. That's how. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I hear the size
from across the room. Yeah.
So what? For something, sometimes I think for me, like people often say, "Oh, is it valued too high or whatnot?" Like if we are ever to get sued, we've never been sued. We have a 0 claims record. It's my life on the line, and I think a lot of people underestimate that. They're quick to make a judgment call on the firm or whatever. But like, if I was to ever do a deal and it was to go tits up, God forbid, it's me. It's my life, my wife's life. My kids' career. I ain't got any kids, or not I know of, but it's my team's careers.
Can have one of mine.
Yeah. But it's my team's careers. And these kids, everyone, they've got their life and hopes and goals. So we're never going to mess something up. But I think people misunderstand insurance and risk, and they just seem to think, oh, that value is done. Not saying us, but they might have valued it up a bit higher than what it should be. Well, if they believe in the value, that's the value. But if they get sued, that's it. That's almost like, we don't have the financial capabilities of the big boys that do get sued. Every other month. We don't have that capability to match them.
Does it actually happen then?
I mean, look, I'm not going to gossip or conjecture about other firms, but I do know that a lot of the big names have obviously had lawsuits and stuff that have gone on, rightly or wrongly. They don't know what's happened and stuff, market shifted and whatnot. I think it's incredibly difficult to actually have a successful lawsuit claim on something, because ultimately there's comps in the report at that time, and it is a subjective thing. There is no right or wrong. What I might say, Stu, how much do you think that water's worth? You might say, I don't know, £2, but I might be really thirsty, so I'll give you £4.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's what people deem a value to be. So it's hard, mate, and it keeps me up at night sometimes, because it's when you have to pay out so much money in insurance, and it just keeps going up because we want to take our PI up to 30-50 million to compete with the big boys. But you have to pay the money to do so. That money fundamentally doesn't go anywhere, So it's hard.
But look, I've got a different but sort of attached view to what Colin's saying there, because having been in court in a previous life, in a fairly brutal court case, thankfully I came out the right side of it. But there's one winner in that scenario, and it ain't the guy who's suing you, and it ain't you if you win. It's the lawyers, yeah, because it's so demanding on your mental capacity. It's a distraction. You're taking your eye off your business, because knowing you're on your business 24/7, aren't you? It's everything you think about, and we're no different, because I think if you're going to be entrepreneurially and take a business from nothing to success and hopefully sell it at some point in the future, you've got to be like that. But I'm never really interested in what your PI is. I couldn't care, because there's only one winner if we go down that route. It's right, your valuation's there. I probably think it's there. Let's discuss it. Okay, I'm comfortable at 3 million, even though you might be at 3.5. So Cole will lend 60, 65, maybe even 70, depending on other factors, and that's it. Let's get on with it. When you get to the end, like you say, it's supply and demand, isn't it? Go back to, we've got some assets around here. We're going to have to sell them at really less than what they were worth 2 years ago when we started, because the market's a bit depressed, particularly at the high end. People aren't comfortable because of the economic climate spending those monies. They're just going to sit there, so demand's dropped.
Yeah.
And you've just got to accept that. They're factors outside of your control, aren't they? And I think whenever you go near PI, I just think you're wasting your time, quite frankly. As you know, as somebody who would have the opportunity to use it or access it, there's just no benefit.
Yeah. So whilst Colin's sat across the table from us, and we've established that we don't value PI a great deal, would you bring someone in-house?
Well, look, yes is the simple answer, but you want anybody who's got that entrepreneurial spirit and that can-do attitude that we touched on 10 minutes ago, who's going to look at it with, look, I think it's worth this, but there's these factors, and if it was my money, which you've said to us before, I'd do this one. I'd do it at that. They don't really come and want to work for a company on a salary, do they?
Yeah.
They're sat in your chair building their own business and bringing people in who are like-minded. But let's be honest, you cast that shadow, don't you? You set that tone, and you've got the experience to do it. We don't. And I just think we would end up, I think our loan book would suffer because we'd probably be as negative as hell, whereas your approach is an example. We have agreed to downvalue stuff in the past. You know, you've maybe found our position through conversation or come nearer to us. We wouldn't have that interaction. I think we know what Daryl's like. We love him to bits, but he, you know, if something's valued at $1 million, he'd just rather view it as 750, wouldn't you? Because it's protection, but you're not going to do a lot of business in that regard. So, look, we'd love to, but I don't think it's a route we're going to go down. Particularly not as our relationship continues to develop and evolve, because it's working, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good to know.
So you've got at least another week. Yeah, it's very interesting. And obviously we see, moving away from PI, we see various trends within the valuation space. Obviously one of the most frequent is the initial stipulation of value is 20% inflated to what we actually think the real value is. And they think, I think a borrower sometimes think that's a good way of preempting the down valuation. So
Correct.
Are there any other trends that you see?
I mean, back to that point quickly, mate, I do the same thing when I do my own stuff. So I will put my value in at higher than what I think it is, on the hope that the fallback position is going to be
what you think
where
it
I think it is, because a lot of time it's a little bit different with Redbook, but on kind of short form term stuff, a lot of it's just tick box. A lot of these valuers are just doing 5 or 6 a day. So realistically, they kind of have to downvalve, because they'll probably raise some alarm bells if they don't. So you generally can fall back to the number you need to do it at. That's not official advice from a valuer to the open market to do, but I'm saying I see that quite a bit. I think we've...
So sorry, that strategy actually works?
It gives you better. Well, if you come in, it's anything. If you come in, say you wanted to buy a house or whatever, you go straight in at your opening offer that you be happy to pay, then you're putting yourself at risk of not necessarily getting the best deal.
Yeah.
So it's what I do. Like when we got a refi coming up on one of our properties, I'm going to whack it right in as high as I can, and then hope they fall back at the actual value that it's worth. And if they do value it up, then great, because it's on a 5-year product and we can deploy the cash and put it in something else. But that's how I sometimes approach it, because I understand why people do things. I'm not a valuer that just lives in the past. I'm a modern day kind of entrepreneurial chap, or try to be, and I can kind of see why people do that. And if you understand why they're doing that, then it makes my life a little bit easier. So I'll often say to, when we cut a deal, do you know how they've got to that point? If I speak to the applicant on site, I was like, oh, tell me how you've got to that valuation. How have you done that? If they just say, oh, an agent's told me to do that, oh, brilliant. Okay, well, it's not going to be worth that.
Yeah.
The worst one I do see is when it's on the market at X price, hasn't sold, and they're trying to get it valued at that price, and it's been on for like 5 months. And I was like, well, look, you're making my life pretty much impossible, because I'm never going to value that for you, because it's never going to be worth that. So that's something we see. On the darker side of things, which is probably what people want to hear about. Like we see a lot of fake ASTs come up. That comes up all the time. Like I was like, mate, that looks like it's been printed yesterday off ChatGPT. Like, at least put some coffee stain on there or something. At least make it look a little bit old and historic. So you have to be careful with that. But we've moved away from the lenders that kind of had those kind of deals, because they just didn't make us feel comfortable. Because sometimes there is a trend of certain lenders just doing certain deals with certain kind of brokers and stuff. And I was like, I don't want to be associated with that. But no, I mean, it's every kind of deal is different. Well, I would say people listening is if they are going to put stuff for like a development proposal together, make it look good, make it look professional. Because when the valuer is going through it, that will have a psychological impact on them. If it's just a crappy Excel, that not even any formulas in there, I'm thinking I don't have the faith that that guy can deliver the project. And especially when we're doing the bank monitoring as well, I was like, man, I just don't trust him. He might be a good builder, but his business sense looks absolutely appalling. So,
but look, it's a great point. How many do we see where my 10-year-old would have done a better job, and you're like, you're looking for £1, £2, £3 million in this loan for the initial money and a development. You can't even really present it in a semi-professional format.
You must have seen some terrible ones, didn't you? You must have seen
and it just wipes your confidence from the start, where and then you might actually speak to the person and actually get to like them and get to trust them. But it's
what do you like to see on like a dev appraisal?
Right, well, it's an interesting one because I've never seen a dev loan that we've done that has been built for the amount of money they said they build it for. Right, so moving forward, and look, neither have I probably ever built one myself or what I thought, so I'm having a go at myself here. But if I want some context, and again, the conversation helps. Why do you think you can build it for that? Like, is most of it on a fixed price JCT? What's your risk? Particularly on the key items, the superstructure, the M&E. How locked in is that? Because very often it isn't, and you'll explore it with them. Well, a build for £220 a square foot, well, great, but we ain't seeing anyone building a decent asset anywhere, anything like that. Maybe 5 years ago, but not now. So I think they've got to really put more effort into convincing you why that dev assessment is broadly accurate, because costs are going up, aren't they? Nothing's going down. Have they factored in that it's a 2-year build, and in a year inflation's probably gonna apply? Because the Travis Perkins or whatever, they're not shy, are they? Once or twice a year it's 6% on everything, it's 20% on plasterboard, it's 30% on insulation. You factored any of that in? But you do, on the other hand, see some brilliant ones where there is a clear risk line. Right, talk me through your risk. Well, my foundation price is quite cheap, so I factored a bit of risk in case he can't see the job out and pulls off. You really think, you know what? Oh yeah, and I'm factoring it in at 250, 260 a square foot. This guy might actually know what he's doing. I'm getting a bit of confidence here. So more flavour on that, I think, is just a fundamental, because our loan book more recently has been bridging, which is great, and we love it. But there's still a big dev market out there. But we've too often in the past been disappointed by the outcome. Yeah, no, because
I've seen a few deals from you guys recently. I like, contrary to popular, I hate killing deals off. Like, you don't want to kill deals off. You kind of feel like you're doing your job when you kill a deal off. But obviously, my mantra's been helping lenders lend, but lend well.
Yes.
And I've seen so many recently, they just don't stack. They just don't. The build costs don't stack. They've not done a profit on GDV. They've done I've seen something like 10% profit on costs, and they've got no contingency, and their build costs are like £150 a square foot. And I'm like, this has got absolutely no chance. And I feel bad about doing it, because you do a lot of time when you go to inspections, you meet the person, and I was like, this could be make or break. And a lot of time it is make or break for these people. But if a deal doesn't stack, it doesn't stack. And the last thing you want to do is be involved in a transaction which is going to put that person in more financial struggles. Yeah. So it's hard. I struggle with that element of the business as a natural empath. Yeah. It's hard for me because I do absorb stuff. And I'm not an arsehole, so you take it on board.
Personally, you do. We've seen that behaviour in you, and that's what we like. But you've hit a great point. When we first started out, before I'd convinced Pete to come on board full time and take the reins because he knows what he's doing, a guy came into my office. He wanted a loan. which then became a loan and an equity play. And he was flaky. He was unconvincing. The asset was horrible. It was one of these commercial to resi apartment conversions with some additional floors on top. And I just didn't like anything about it and him. And 4 years later, I still drive past the site. No one's funded him. I remember about an hour after I'd met him, I'm walking down the village high street here, and he walked past me and didn't recognise me, but he'd been asking me for millions of pounds like 2 hours earlier. And you see a lot of that, unfortunately, in the space. We got caught pretty badly at the start by a flaky individual whose name's etched on my headboard every night when I go to bed. But you learn from it, don't you? And I think like you do a good job, I think, at wheedling those people out as well. And we're getting better at it. So when we're talking about
it's hard though, isn't it? But I think you guys are both very successful chaps. Like you do have a good gut read on people, don't you? After a while, you can kind of like, I don't know what. Well,
we're all right with that.
I like him. Do you know what I mean? Like, or her. You know, I trust them. You know, and I think that's so important in this game is trust. The whole.
And I think if somebody's been in the game a while, they have a reputation, don't they? You can see who they've borrowed off before. We had one recently. The valuation was a mile off. So right at the start, we were like, look, we're 7 figures off that. 30% different. But we'd love to lend on the asset, but our valuation's this. And he went off and just thought, I like that guy, and I do trust my valuation. He's going to be back. We phoned someone else who'd lent him the money before, said, he won't let you down. And he came back, and we did the loan at our valuation, and he's not missed a beat. And
nice.
Everyone's happy, and we'll hopefully do business with him again in the future.
Well, actually, it has already this week come back to us saying, can we go again?
That wasn't rehearsed, Colin.
But like you say, you don't like to tank a deal.
No.
We don't. The whole business is based on getting the money out of the door.
He hates tanking a deal.
Yeah, I know he does. I feel so bad. Like when I speak to one of your lawyers, like we got on well, and I was like, "What's your gut?" I was like, "I don't know if you should do it or not." And then like we come to it, I was like, "He's gonna be so upset. I've got to kill it."
Sometimes
I'm so sorry.
I have to hug him sometimes and say, "Pete, just let it go. We can't do this."
It's like a little puppy, innit? You've got to like stroke him, make sure. Not in a weird way.
It's Daryl that gets the worst of that. It's me grovelling in the corner. Are you sure? But no.
If the next best deal's around the corner, that's how I look at it.
Of course it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And ultimately, we would never pull from a deal unless there was a reason to. So we've heard about some of the trends and some of the negatives. What is the secret to getting a valuation back as expected?
There's tips that I can obviously share. I think we touched on a few of them. You know, I personally love to know behind the brain of the person, who's put the valuation in, how have they got to those numbers? Talk me through it. I want to know how those where on earth have you plucked 4 million quid from? Like, what have you based it on? What we've got one we just done, we inspected it on Tuesday. It's a £9 million gaff. It's a big old boy in North London. They're comps for it, but I want to know how he's got to those comps. I want to know how he's put those numbers together. I need to be inside the head of the applicant a lot of times to understand that. Really simple people skills and etiquette go a long way with a valuer. Like if I'm on site and someone's horrible to me or they're horrible to my staff, like we had someone calling up the other day. Unfortunately we had to downvalue a deal for this person or for the client, but the applicant kept berating my staff, like effing and blinded and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, that's not the way to do stuff, and if there was the slight possibility that I might reconsider some evidence that you'd sent in, I'm not now, because that's not how you treat people, So I just think being genuinely just a good person will always help stuff. If it's just a standard house or a standard bridge, really simple stuff, like just tidy it up. Just tidy it, keep it clean,
make the bed,
make it smell nice. Just really simple, and don't be obstructive for the valuer. So when we turn up, like, I don't want to feel like you're hiding something from me. I don't want to turn up and that door's locked. Why is that door locked? What's going on there? What's happened? Be as constructive as you can with your valuer. Don't put any pressure on them. Definitely don't bloody offer them anything, because that's never going to help. And as soon as they do that, you go straight to RICS. You have to tell them that this has been offered to you. You have to tell the client. Luckily, it doesn't happen half as much as people like to think it does. But you can quickly work out the type of applicants that are going to be like that. If they say, "Oh, can I meet you for a coffee?" I'm like, "No, I'm not." Like that's not what we do. People assume because you're from Essex, that's what you do. I was like, that's not actually what we do, mate. So it's literally just playing the game, but like just boxing clever and just be realistic. I know that to contradict what I said earlier, I know people do put their numbers in quite high, but actually have a realistic expectation of where you expect that valuation to come back, and base your whole deal expectation on that real number. If you get a higher value, great, but just be realistic, and then you can't, and just remember there's lots of people involved. So just, I can't drill it enough. Just don't be horrible to people, because it swings and roundabouts in this space.
But I think you've made a couple of great points there. Take your £9 million gaff or whatever you refer to it. You get them. UK as properties worth that, and some of them they're stunning, aren't they?
Yeah.
We lent on a place in Yorkshire. It's just, what a beautiful property. I mean, you almost want it to go wrong because you want to repossess it. It's that nice. Convince your wife and kids to move into it. But if it's £9 million, show us the true comparator. Why do you get to that? Well, this one sold on the adjacent road for 10. Yeah, but it's absolutely mint. And your £9 million one, stunning outside, but it needs 2 or 3 million spending on it to get it to that standard. And I think where we struggle on that higher end is, we touched on London earlier, not a lot shifting. So you haven't got anything really relevant in a close time window. I'm starting to do a little bit of business in the UAE now, because why not? It's dead buoyant, it's dead positive, the weather's better. But you've got like a comparator that, why is that one worth £5 million? Because, Stuart, that sold for 6. Let's have a walk in. I sold it to the lady, she'll let us in. And like, you can go and literally see something that's shifted weeks ago that's almost identical, and you can get yourself comfortable in that regard. I think that's a real tricky one, particularly in that London space, because nothing's going.
Yeah, and a lot of time people are like, I've done it to a really high standard. I was like, to your taste. And your taste is not everyone's taste, and that's a big thing at the moment. Some people's taste is horrific, but they've obviously spent millions on marble everywhere, and type of houses I mean, and
but it's personal choice, isn't it? And they might strike lucky, and someone might come along with that sort of budget, and it's their style. But if you make it quite specific, you're narrowing your funnel down, aren't you, of potential buyers. And look, I'm like you, I hate the sterile box that's dead bland. You can almost guess who the interior designer was, but people do buy them. There's a wide market of people who like them. So you need to have a think about it when you're throwing a lot of money at a finish. Open it up to as many people as you can, or leave the critical bits and adjust your price accordingly.
I think there's a good market for that.
I do.
Like, kind of almost like when you reconfigure a car before you buy it. I think there's a market for that out there. Like, I'd definitely do something like that if there was an opportunity. I'm sure people do that, but
I was having a debate with a guy in the UAE the other week about appliances in the kitchen. It's all got to be Gagger now. I'm like, but why? It's behind the door. You know what I mean? Why? Like, go with something half the price. It's not like the names there on show as you guess walk into the house, but we're all different, aren't we?
Talking a little bit more about commerciality and our personability side of things. When I was looking through actually some of our historic transactions over last week, and I see things in there like 100% loan to value on a ground rent portfolio. I see
that's my bag, mate.
Exactly. I see 166% loan to value on a property that we'd bridged on the strength of an A&L in the background. I've seen 100% land with planning. We've done some really quirky stuff. Are there some nightmare bits for you in terms of valuing? When we send you a set of terms over that says 166% loan to value, there must be some question marks, but you must also see some asset classes that are just a nightmare to value.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like ground rent portfolio, you touched on that a minute ago. That was my background, leasehold enfranchisement, pretty niche, not sexy. My wife has no idea. Feels weird saying wife, I got married last week, but stuff like that is really tricky. Stuff where there's a lot of political influence is a pain in the arse to do. So obviously ground rent's a great example, because that's a forever moving target with, there's court appeals in the Court of Human Rights. Nightmare. I find things with care tricky. You have to have a specialist that does it. We can do them, but the more you get into it, it's a wonderful asset class. I think we were chatting about it. I love it, and it's something I'd love to explore even more. And get the right people. But again, it's tricky because lenders have different approaches to it. So not every lender is the same. So that's also, not everyone likes the fixed 5-year contracts with, because a lot of them are over rented, that kind of thing. HMOs, just HMOs. People are. That's, for me, is a really tricky one at the moment. I think I've had my eye on it for about 2 years now, and I was like, this feels like this bit of a bubble. It's a dangerous bubble.
Is that because the difference between yield on an AST comparative to an HMO is so wildly different, or
it's what they're valued at for finance is never what they sell at on a bricks and mortar basis, and good HMOs never sell. You never see them. You never see HMOs on the market. But I think it's just a shift in perception. Fundamentally, HMO is a business, and I think the financing of HMOs should be almost like a business-based loan. Not that I'm an expert, so I'm probably saying things like, what the hell is he talking about? But it's a HMO. A HMO is a business. I think it's not necessarily a property. A lot of our lender clients who are very prevalent in the space are pushing back more and more now on bricks. They want more bricks and mortar. There's not many comps around for that kind of stuff.
No.
So it is really hard sometimes to work on asset classes where there are very limited comps. Car parks. Not many car parks transact in the UK every year.
No.
Caravan parks. Not many of them do that. Again, a wicked business.
Yeah.
I love caravan parks. I'm a big fan of them. My business partner bought one during COVID when he thought it was going to be the next big thing. So it's just one, for me, the trickier ones are one where there's limited comparable evidence. And then it's on me to do my research, my detective work, speak with the right staff members who are trained in that. But again, if the comps aren't there, doesn't mean it doesn't have a value, but it does make it really tricky
100%.
to kind of get a value across. So I hope that answered your question. I'm not sure if I did.
Yeah, it did. And let's explore a couple of them.
Yeah.
So the HMOs, I struggle with this because a lot of people, I've got an apartment block they're all rented individually to tenants, and HMO companies come along and sniff around it, but the introducer is some random person who sees a get rich quick scheme in HMOs, and you're like, well, wait a minute, I bought a watch off you 2 years ago in a jewellery shop. What are you getting involved in this for? So they concern me a lot because the differential, as you said, between its bricks and mortar value and what it's valued as an HMO knocking out a massive yield, it's massive. It can't be right. And like
the
you
disparity
said,
is huge. When a lot of times there's no material change even in the house. So I was like, how can that house be worth 800 grand and that house next door is worth 400 grand? It just makes absolutely no logical sense.
Well, the new one is we see so many people knocking on the door around specialist childcare.
Yep.
5-bedroom house, 3 kids, communal area, 2 members of staff, people on shifts and all that. And it's a 400 grand house. There's one not far from the studio, and they're valuing it at 800,000. But if it's not operating with those people in it, it's worth 400. It's probably worth 370 when we need to sell it. So where do you get that from? Ground rents is a phenomenal one. I do not claim to understand it, but our previous guest, Mark Hawthorne, obviously it's his.
I know Mark, yeah.
Mark's a great guy, and he's done really well in that space. And we've worked with him. We provided some funding on 1 or 2 things he's done, but he's approached it like, you have a look at this. We don't like it. Let me come and spend some. And he's almost educated us and got us to a point where, you know what? Like a 166% loan, whatever crazy lend we did there. But we got ourselves comfortable. He got us to understand it, the risks, the opportunity, the likely up or downside, and provided additional security in the mix that just got us comfortable to do it. Yeah, I think it'll go right, but just in case.
Was it a reversionary portfolio? So was it short leases or was it just pure income?
My understanding of it, and he'll give you a better answer. The truthful one, it was a right mixed bag.
Yep.
It was a strong portfolio that had been mismanaged over years. There was some bad assets in there that needed dealing with, tidying up, disposing of, or whatever. But then the political environment around it does a bit of this, doesn't it? Depending on who he's talking about. It was Michael Gove back in that day who had a real bee in his bonnet about it. And Mark did his deal and moved it forward and seems to have done good luck to him very, very well out of it. But and we did, but we were in and out in the space we were comfortable in. And
Still doing it?
off we went, no, we're out now.
You're still doing ground rent?
We'd always consider it, but the difference with Mark was I trust
Mark's
him
an incredible operator. Yeah,
I really trust him.
He's for 15 years I've known Mark now. He's a very impressive chap.
So that was probably the tipping point on that one. So somebody rocking up with a ground rent portfolio cold. No, as he panicked, sat there on the chair.
I've got this ground rent portfolio.
I was half expecting that to come out anyway. Well, it's very interesting, especially they're not the asset classes I thought you would go for, to be honest.
What do you think I was going to say?
I was almost convinced because it's one of our bigger products, land with planning.
I like land with planning. It's tricky. It's hard because a lot of time you can't have to do a valuation based on the residual a lot of the time because there's not always comparable evidence available for it, and that is tricky. I've got a few at the moment we're doing. I was like, I'm going to do one for you at the moment.
Yeah, I think you're doing more than one for us at the minute. Yeah.
So it's just, but again, a lot of time there are good comparables for stuff like that with land with planning, land without planning, hope value. That's always fun.
But look, I'm with you a bit, Colin, on that. We've got some peers and some people we're close to. We bounce off each other a lot who hate it.
Yeah.
Probably because they've had their fingers burnt on it in the past. But again, it's taking right. What have you got planning for? Is there a demand for that in the area? Because sometimes you'll see it and like, well, fair play, you've got planning for 10 houses on a semi-rural area, but where's the demand? Because you just take the Google map out layer by layer and there's nothing else there. Well, where are you going to find 10 buyers for? And there might be a comparable or two nearby, but you're looking for 10 buyers at the end of that. So I know we're only bridging it for a period of time, but the next person who's probably doing the dev finance are going to look at how much do you want? Again, what's the build cost? 180 a square foot or 280? In reality, what's your exit price? Is the demand there? You've really got to do your homework, haven't you? But we can get ourselves comfortable with it, and we do, don't we?
Yeah, I'd say it's one of our most popular products.
I think that's why your name's getting out there as well, because there aren't many lenders that are educated enough to take it on.
But look, I don't think you'd get us in the 70% LTV bracket, far from it, but we can get ourselves comfortable.
But then again, that gives us comfort, because I know if your LTV is at an X amount of like a good level, then that gives us a bit more comfort. And also, in football terms, it's like putting Bruno Fernandes in that number 10 spot. Like, you actually put me in a position where I actually want to play football. You're not playing me out of position, so I've got to be, I don't feel comfortable doing what I'm doing. I was like, do you know what? I can actually spend the time looking at this because I know these guys are serious about lens on this. That's a weird analogy. I don't know why I went with that.
No, I get it. We all go and watch a bit of Man United, so we probably relate to your analogy.
Yeah, well, you've mentioned it very briefly there, and I know it's a sector that's particularly close to Stuart's heart. Care. Mm-hmm. Is that an area that you see as the future for project? Are there specific areas that you see in...
Care is a paramount part of my plan moving forward. Even today on LinkedIn, I'm looking for kind of C2 specialist valuers to come in and join the firm. I think it is the next trend. I'm already seeing multiple. We do a lot of bricks and mortar care homes and stuff, and they're tricky enough to value because there's not an abundance of comps around. They tend to trade either on the grey market or auction, and it's just... Yeah. I want to see it. It's a sector I care quite passionately about just generally because my mum is a cleaner and she works in a lot of care homes, and I saw how bad they were run, and how mismanaged they were, and how these poor. If you haven't done well enough in life to afford a good care home, a lot of time you get stuck into these kind of council run. Shocking, and it stuck with me. I was like, these poor people. My mum ended up having to be a care worker on the cleaner's wage, trying to, not that any different, to be fair, but and I was like, so it's a sector that I would love to get more involved in from a personal kind of, not philanthropic. I just wanted to use that word, but from a,
we're going to ask you to spell it now.
No idea, but I know it starts with P. So it's a sector I want to be involved in and get involved with and help with, but again, it is finding the right valuers that can do it. And unfortunately, a lot of the best ones are at the big corps, and it is hard to try and poach them. As much as I pain to admit it, there are firms out there that are better suited to us than us at the moment. But hopefully, we'll change that. But it is a big part of our business, and I think for investors and stuff, I know every social media thing's about HMOs. Let's do HMOs, blah blah blah. If people are going to get into that space, I just hope they get into the space for. Obviously, it does make financial sense to do it, but also that they do, they do generally care about the facilities that they're doing, and putting the right care providers in, and not just some two bob.
But look, I think cares is a great thing to explore because look, we ended up into it. We touched on it in our last podcast by default rather than design. That if you take solid business principles into care, right, first and foremost, the priority is the care of the residents, yeah? Because without that, you've got a bad reputation, your licence is at risk and all those things. Get people in who understand care, who are passionate about it, because I don't get it. It's not my passion, but I get the fact that if you've got the right people in the mix, and we work with 3 or 4 great people at the home we've got, but just instill basic business principles of get your costs as low as you can and under control and know what they are. How do you improve your revenue? Because very often there's a balance between private residents and state residents, and there's a price differential in that. Keep the place like your property analogy. You know, you want the right valuation on the care. Have it looking decent.
Yeah.
You know, if the walls need a lick of paint, if the carpet's threadbare, it ain't about. It's just first impression stuff, isn't it? It's basics. And then what else can you do? Like our home, we just submitted this morning planning for another 6 bedrooms. Because it just takes the profitability to a better place in percentage terms, and thus on a valuation hopefully makes it worth more. But there's so many poorly run assets. My ex-business partner Dan, he's looking at getting involved in it because the family have some experience in the care sector, and he sees exactly what I see. Look, get the right people, apply a business acumen, profit and loss approach to it with the right level of service. You almost can't not make money. You know, we're looking to refi our home now, extend it, probably do another one. It's one of the few exciting sectors, I think, in a pretty dull UK economy at the moment.
Completely agree.
Use your football analogy. Jim Radcliffe, was it yesterday or this morning in the press, was pretty scathing. Can you argue with his principles? Look, your opinion on immigration and migrants is a personal thing, probably not for us to explore here, but his logic can't be wrong, can it? There's a human rights element to the debate, which I think we'll let him go off and explore with the current government, but his logic's right. Yeah. You're adding a load of cost in and no revenue, the country struggling at but care and probably nursery care for kids. They're exciting spaces. People are doing really well.
Babies are wasn't be born, people wasn't get old.
Indeed, and you know, very often more and more there's 2 working parents in the family, so they need that childcare. So yeah, I think take our care home now. There's a waiting list. It's full. We're going to add more rooms in it.
There's one in Glasgow.
Yeah, it's just a buoyant space, isn't it?
And it's full of happy people as well.
Happy people, the staff. I mean, I love going there. I don't particularly like the drive to Glasgow because my team up there aren't playing great. So I used to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. But it's a great space, and some of the people are phenomenal. They're so passionate about it, and you know that takes a certain individual, isn't it? It scares me particularly, but they love it, and they're just great to work with. But yeah, it's a phenomenal space.
Well, that's a little bit about the future then. What does the future look like for Colin Horton? Project aside, where do you see yourself?
Wow. Do you know what, mate? At the moment, I'm enjoying creating what we're creating at a project. I'm putting myself in spaces I never thought I'd be. I never thought I'd be doing something like this today. And there, you know, sitting next to guys like Stu, yourself, like it's important. You know, I've banged on about my daddy issues left, right, and centre on LinkedIn, and I think for me now it's creating a network that I can go and enjoy life a bit with good people and have fun with business again. You know, I think for the last 2 years, business has been a slog. It's been hard. It's been, you know, as much as I come across as this like anarchist for the valuation sector, you know, I'm just a young lad just trying to enjoy my life as best I can and try and make something of myself. And, you know, I'm a creative soul. There's lots of things I want to do and explore. I want to build a firm so it becomes mega profitable for everyone involved. It's doing well now, but, you know, I want to give the staff the best careers that I can. And like I said, I don't know where my paths will take me. But we just got married, so my focus now is buying our dream home, which is really cool, which I'm excited for. And then just be a good husband, be a good guy, be a good boss, be a good friend. Like whatever else comes with that. So
mate, keep doing what you're doing, because look, from the outside looking in, we love working with you and the team. It's great. Keep doing what you're doing. I think you've got so much runway ahead of you. I think there's an older breed in your space who are retiring, and the property market's so different now. I was having this chat with someone this morning. Take the UAE analogy. It hides a lot of bad developers out there because the market's growing, and I feel it probably will continue to do, maybe not at the rate it's at. Things have been pretty flat here. You built a business in pretty grim times in that sector. So imagine if it turns, which we all hope it does, because then more people are being successful in the property space. It's a massive UK asset class.
I appreciate that, mate. I think sometimes my missus is like, you just need to be content with what you've done, like in that space. Because I've only been to school for 2 years, and we've come in and like got not to the top, but we're right up there now in terms of instruction levels. And I just sometimes I'm never present. I mean, I'm sure you both felt that in your careers. Like you don't ever sit back and think, oh, do you know what, I've actually done all right here.
But I don't think if you're wired the way you're wired, you do a lot of that. No. I spoke about Dan, my old business partner, and we often reflect on the journey we were on. And we do wish we'd enjoyed it more. But you're that razor focused on going in every day, turn the lights off, get the team bedded in, make that business better every day. The smarter people do it with a bit less stress and allow a little bit of time for themselves, and we didn't. We were just too robotic. So I think, as being a good bit older than you, if I could ever give you a bit of advice, that would be it. There's a balance. You do see, and particularly in the property game, people spending it before they've earned it. I'd always advise against that. I
made that mistake mate, before.
Right. And continues to make that mistake, actually.
But I think you go in there, try and get better every day, and some things will be what they will be. They will work themselves out. And I think in the space you're in, the market gets less gloomier with the work you've done and the foundation you've laid.
Thank you, mate. I appreciate it.
You'll do that, mate.
That actually stole my last question. Any last bits of advice? But actually, that was a really nice,
Look, I think that's it. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you, mate.
Well, Colin, thank you so much for joining us.
No
Stuart,
worries.
thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And I look forward to the next one.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.